The jungle is silent, and that is the worst possible sign. The man kneeling by the fire feels it before he sees it. The body locks up. The hairs on his arm stand on end. 2 yellow dots, glowing in the dark, a few meters from the fire. His name is Yossi Ghinsberg, Israeli, 21 years old. He has been lost in the Bolivian Amazon for 3 weeks. He has 2 objects in the entire world: a can of insect spray and a plastic lighter. No food, no map, no boots, no direction. The largest feline in the Americas. A bite force of 1,500 kilograms per square centimeter. Strong enough to crush a caiman's skull with a single bite. What really happened in that jungle? What happened to the other 3 men? What his mind invented to keep him alive, and the one reason he made it out, is so absurd it makes the Jaguar seem gentle. But before we get to the fire and the Jaguar, we need to go back 3 weeks. La Paz, Bolivia. January 1981. Yossi Ghinsberg is sitting in a cheap cafe in the city center, 21 years old, just out of the Israeli army. He has a backpack, some savings, and no plan. He just wants adventure. And that is exactly the kind of person the jungle eats first. At the cafe, he meets 3 foreigners. Marcus, Swiss, schoolteacher. Expensive leather shoes, completely wrong. Kevin, American, photographer. Carl, Austrian, early 30s. Carl, Austrian, says he knows the Amazon, like no one else. Says he knows where a lost tribe exists that no one has ever seen. Says he has a map. 5 days later, the 4 of them are inside the forest. And in less than a week, everything starts to fall apart. Marcus, with those leather shoes, has his feet raw. Every step is a silent torture. They build a raft out of trunks bound with vines. They shake hands. They agree to meet again in 2 weeks at an outpost hundreds of kilometers downriver. That was the last time Marcus and Carl were ever seen alive. The first 2 days on the raft are almost good. The Tuichi River runs slowly in this part of the forest. Wide, brown, calm. The forest on the banks is an endless green wall. Monkeys scream from afar. Birds fly low among the trees. For a few moments, it even looks beautiful. And then the sound changes. In the beginning, it's just a distant murmur, like a constant wind coming from somewhere ahead. Kevin asks what it is. Yossi doesn't know. The murmur turns into a rumble. The rumble turns into a roar. They both understand at the same time. Waterfall. Yossi looks ahead and sees what no one wants to see in an Amazonian river. The river's horizon line simply ends. The water disappears. It's the universal sign of freefall. They begin to paddle desperately toward the right bank. The branches hit the water with no strength against the current. The raft turns sideways, spins, and is pulled faster and faster toward the center of the river. Kevin is the first to see the rock. A large flat rock a few meters from the bank. He calculates in a split second, either jump now or die in the waterfall. He jumps. Yossi tries to jump right after. He can't. The raft sways at the wrong moment. He loses his balance and falls back onto the logs. And when he looks up, Kevin is already on the rock, getting smaller and smaller. They look at each other for the last possible second. No words. No goodbye. Only the distance growing between them. And then the raft falls. 5 drops in a row. Yossi is spat out from the logs at the impact of the first fall. He spins underwater, not knowing which way is up. He hits his shoulder on a rock, another fall, another. He spins underwater, not knowing which way is up. He hits his shoulder on a rock. He returns to the surface for a second, swallows water, and is sucked down again. The backpack is gone. The boots are gone. The plastic lighter, which he had tucked into a small pouch on his belt the night before, is still there. So is the bug spray can. He manages to crawl to a rock on the bank. He coughs, spits water, vomits. Dense jungle in every direction. No trail, no sign of Kevin, no way of knowing where to go. The Amazon has swallowed him, and now it will begin to digest. The first thing Yossi discovers about the Amazon is that it has no ground. There is mud, roots that hide holes, dead leaves that seem firm but sink a meter deep when you step on them. Every step is a calculation. Where to step, how to shift the weight, whether that leaf hides a snake, a scorpion, or a palm thorn the size of a finger. The entire forest seems designed to hurt. On the second day, he sits leaning against a trunk to rest. A mistake. In seconds, fire ants crawl up his legs. Hundreds of them. Every bite burns like a cigarette tip. Yossi gets up shaking his body, slapping his pants, running aimlessly through the brush. When he finally stops, he is covered in red marks that will burn for hours. At night, he lies on the damp ground because it's the only warm place. And that's when the leeches arrive. They crawl through his pant cuffs in silence. They stick to the legs. They swell until they are the size of a thumb, full of blood. When Yossi wakes up and realizes there are 5 of them on his body, A leech's saliva is a natural anticoagulant. The wound bleeds for hours afterward. On the 5th day, Yossi feels something moving under the skin of his arm. He squeezes. A white larva partially emerges. He pulls. The larva goes back inside. Flies laid eggs on his body while he slept. He finds more on the other arm, on his back, in places he can't even reach. Hunger arrives on the 4th day. He eats raw eggs from abandoned nests, fruits he doesn't know, with a bitter taste that could be poison. Roots he scrapes from the ground with his own nails. He vomits half. The other half stays down. Yossi walks in circles for days. The trees all look the same. The sun disappears behind the forest canopy, a cover of treetops so dense it barely lets any light through. No sun, no direction, no direction, no route, no route, no hope, only green, infinite green, green that eats you. 19th day, Yossi manages to light a small fire. It took hours. The Amazon humidity makes everything rot before it can burn. But he gathers dry twigs and finally has fire. The warmth reaches his body, and for a few seconds it seems that everything will be okay, that he will manage to rest, that this night will be different. And then the sound of the forest stops. The birds, the insects, the rustling of leaves, everything, all at once. 2 yellow dots appear in the darkness, about 8 meters from the fire. They don't blink, they don't move, they just watch. The Jaguar slowly enters the fire circle of light. It doesn't run, it doesn't growl, it walks as if it has already decided what is going to happen. Every step silent, calculated, unhurried. Yossi has nowhere to run. Running in front of a Jaguar is guaranteed death. He has no knife, no stick, no way to climb a tree with his destroyed feet. What he has is inside his pants pocket. The bug spray can, the plastic lighter. The idea hits like a lightning bolt, one of those the brain invents when the body has already given up on thinking. Right hand, the lighter. Left hand, the can. The Jaguar is 6 meters away now. 5. Yossi turns the lighter wheel. The spark ignites the flame. He presses the spray valve exactly in front of the fire. A fireball explodes from his hand toward the Jaguar. The noise is dry, muffled, loud. The Jaguar retreats 2 steps. Its yellow eyes reflect the fire. Yossi squeezes again. Another fireball, and another and another. The Jaguar disappears back into the dark as silently as it entered. Yossi falls sitting on the ground, hands shaking, his heart beating in his chest so hard that he can hear the sound inside his own head. The fire still burns. The spray can is still warm between his fingers. And he understands, for the first time since the waterfall, a simple thing. He has just invented a weapon. After the Jaguar, something begins to break inside Yossi. It's not the fear, the continuous hunger, the fever rising from the infections in his feet, the nights without sleep. The human brain was not made to be alone this way for so long. On the 22nd day, Yossi realizes he is no longer alone. There is a woman walking beside him. He knows she isn't real, but she is there, walking at the same rhythm. The steps hitting the ground of dead leaves. She has a name, she has a voice. And when Yossi starts to talk to her, she responds. They talk about small things. His house in Israel, the Mediterranean Sea, his mother's food. Yossi tells stories that he had forgotten he knew. She tells him to keep walking when he wants to stop. Tells him to drink the water from that puddle when he's afraid to drink. Tells him to sleep under that specific tree because it's better protected from the wind. Yossi obeys. He begins to depend on her. When he finds an edible fruit, he splits it in half. One half for him, another half for her. At night, he lies near the fire, leaving space so she can lie down too. Scientists call this phenomenon felt presence. It is documented in survivors of shipwrecks, mountaineers at the top of Everest, people lost in deserts. When the nervous system is pushed to the limit of solitude, the brain manufactures a companion to prevent total collapse. Yossi didn't know about this research. He only knew one thing. If she stopped appearing, he would die. She was with him for 4 days. And then, without warning, at the moment he needed it most, at the exact instant the Amazon was going to try and kill him in a way he had never imagined possible, she disappeared. 26th day. It's not stagnant water. It's not a common swamp. It's Varzea. Waterlogged land that seems solid on top and is liquid cement underneath. The first step sinks to the ankle, the second to the knee, the third to the waist. Yossi tries to go back, but the movement of taking the weight off one leg sinks the other more. He waves his arms looking for some support. There is nothing, only black mud in every direction. He tries to scream, but there is no one to hear. The imaginary woman isn't there. For the first time in 4 days, she isn't there. He tries to use his arms like oars, tries to grab roots out of reach, tries to throw his weight back. Each attempt sinks him a little more. The mud is now at his chest. The leg muscles begin to fail. He won't die by the Jaguar. He won't die by the larvae. He won't die of hunger on the ground. He will die swallowed, slowly, by the earth itself. Yossi stops fighting. It's not a conscious decision. It's his body saying it's over. His arms fall into the mud. His breathing becomes short. He closes his eyes waiting for the water to rise until it covers everything. And it's exactly at that moment that something strange happens. The mud lets go. When he stops struggling, the vacuum that was trapping his legs dissolves. Inch by inch, with minimal movements, he manages to crawl across the surface. 4 hours after the first step, Yossi is lying face down on a firm bank, covered in black mud from head to toe, alive by accident. But something broke for real this time. The imaginary woman didn't return. The strength he had to continue simply disappeared. His feet now have live larvae moving inside wounds he doesn't even feel anymore. On the 29th day, he sits leaning against a tree on the banks of the Tuichi River. He closes what's left of his eyes and waits, ready to die. But the story isn't just about Yossi. Remember Kevin, the American who managed to jump to the rock before the waterfall? While Yossi walked in circles through the jungle, Kevin was doing the hardest thing a man can do in that situation. Going back, he walked for days until he reached a village of indigenous fishermen. He didn't speak their language. He used drawings on the ground to explain what had happened. The locals said it was impossible. They said no one survived more than a week alone in that part of the Amazon. They said Yossi had certainly died in the waterfall. They said Kevin was wasting money for nothing. Kevin didn't give up. For almost 3 weeks, he paid Bolivian guides out of his own pocket. He went up the Tuichi River by motorboat with fishermen who knew every curve. He stopped at every bank, he called out loud. He looked for signs of fire, marks on the ground, anything. Nothing. On the 29th day after the waterfall, in a stretch of the river no one expected. Because the current would carry any survivor much further, one of the fishermen pointed to the bank. There was a figure leaning against a tree, covered in black mud. Immobile, almost invisible against the trunk. Kevin asked to stop the boat. He jumped into the shallow water. He walked toward the figure without knowing if it was a dead animal, a body, or something else. Yossi heard the footsteps before seeing them, but he thought it was just another hallucination, another imaginary woman, another ghost of hunger. He didn't even move. He didn't even try to open his eyes. It was when Kevin touched him, when Yossi's body felt a real, warm, human hand rest on his shoulder, a hand that wasn't from the forest or his own mind. He understood he was being saved. The two embraced in silence on the riverbank. Yossi survived, but here comes the part that hurts. Marcus and Carl, who returned by the path considered safe, through the mountains, with a map, with boots, with supplies, never arrived anywhere. The Bolivian authorities searched for weeks. They found isolated footprints. They found evidence of a fight. They never found bodies. Of the 4 men who entered that forest, 2 survived, and neither of them was who the plan said would survive. Yossi returned to Israel. He wrote a book about the expedition. Today he lives as an environmental activist, ironically defending the same forest that almost killed him. When they ask what he learned in the Amazon, he has given the same answer for more than 40 years. The jungle doesn't kill you out of hatred. It kills you because you forgot that you're part of it.